And we're back on the Quantum Quadcast right here in 80.7 KIGC, The Kitchen. We just got done talking about some of the things we've been watching this past week and just a little bit about ourselves. But now we're going to go into Bryan Singer's recent film, and that is X-Men Days of Future Past. And before we even start going into the review, I just want to get a kind of a demographic of what everyone thought about this film. Jordan, what do you think about the movie?
Just 2 thumbs way up, John. Come on. I'm in a Magneto suit for crying out loud.
All right, and I guess that's good enough. Nick, what about yourself?
I enjoyed my time at the movie. I wouldn't say it's my favorite X-Men movie. Probably the best summer movie I've seen so far this year.
And Jordan? Sorry, not Jordan. You're Jacob. What am I talking about?
Hey.
Hey, Jacob.
I am with Jordan here. I was thoroughly entertained the whole time, and I was wanting more X-Men.
He's wanting more.
I'll be honest with you. Me talking to Nick previously this week about really not wanting to do another show just because give me a week because I don't know if I'll watch it. Mind blown. Very impressed. I left the movie theater mouth open, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. I've neglected myself. I've been wanting to neglect myself from this. But yeah, so I liked it. So that's kind of what I'm trying to say here. Nick, how about you just help us take us off into the review, please?
All right. Well, I was trying to figure this out earlier. I think it's the 5th main X-Men movie. Is anybody else confirm that? I think
yes, it is.
If we count First
Class.
Class as part 4, so this is
Yes,
part 5,
okay.
and then there's been a couple of Wolverine spin-offs, correct?
Yes, 2 Wolverine movies, so if you discount those, this would be the 5th.
So to start, I guess, what did anybody have any huge qualms with the film right off the bat, or was everybody just kind of on board for the ride?
I would like to say this. Okay,
Yeah,
you
start
said
us off,
this is the 7th
Jake.
total, including the X-Men characters, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of those 7, 6 of them had a main character named Hugh Jacked Man, and I have a problem with that. I mean, I think of all the characters that X-Men has, you couldn't pick somebody other than Wolverine to go back in time. I wanted to see some more, maybe Kitty Pryde, because she was actually the one that did go back in time in Days of Future Past, the comic. Maybe she can't carry that movie on her shoulders, but I'm just saying...
No.
Yeah,
No,
no, I was going to agree.
I don't care
Jacob
what you
wants
say.
Shadow
Does it
Cat
have
the
to be-
movie.
No. I'm not saying that.
I
I'm just
understand
saying-
that the movies are very Wolverine-centric, but to me, he's
Exactly.
kind of their bread and butter. He's like the Batman or the Iron Man of this franchise, of this team-up movie. Where you kind of he's the one everybody wants to see, and personally I want to see too. I can't imagine any of these other guys kind of leading this movie. To me, they did that with First Class, and I thought it was kind of a lesser film because I didn't care about a lot of those mutants.
No, I didn't.
Well, they totally dumped on some of the other mutants there too, like Cyclops. He's the leader of the X-Men for a very long time in the comic world.
I get where you're coming from, Jacob.
And I think that he could have, possibly taken up that role. I don't know. I'm just saying there's other leaders other than Wolverine, and he's kind of like the outcast kind of guy. And I think, yes, Hugh Jackman does carry Hugh Jackman carries those roles very well. But I'm just saying, from a comic book perspective, I think it could have.
Sure, it's time for somebody else to step up and take a lead.
I get where you're coming from with that, but even then, I agree. A lot of the films, the earlier X-Men, that was kind of their ideas to make it more Wolverine-centric. Something they kind of realized he's a very interesting character. So in Days of Future Past, even in interviews and things like that, I think they've just said that logically it made the most sense to have Wolverine go back. Cause you
got to think of budgetary. What's going to make money, Kitty Pryde or Wolverine?
Well,
Wolverine.
I know, but they were so blatant about it too. It's just
he
his healing factor can make him not.
Well, it
snap,
makes sense.
and
He was the one who was actually there of those X-Men. I think it made for a more interesting movie. I really couldn't imagine.
Yeah, I think you're right. From a story standpoint, what's more interesting, to send back Magneto or Professor X, the guy that has already combined all these guys together and is going to do it easily by talking to himself, or the guy that's got the least chance of bringing the whole team together because he's kind of the outcast and the loner. So to me, there is more drama in that. There's a little more excitement in that this guy is going to have more of a challenge bringing them together, because really throughout the other movies we've already seen Professor Xavier bring the team together. So I understand story-wise, but I understand what you're also saying, Jake,
Yeah.
is that it's time to be a little less Wolverine-centric in these movies.
All right. Well, that's all I.
Well,
I
could
have
I
to say
just
on
can I
that.
go in because I want to discuss why I love this movie so much, as well as just why I almost had such a hesitation to even go see it, because I'm going to mark only Marvel, because like I have top 3 Marvel like comic books characters that I absolutely love from childhood to now, and number 1 is the Hulk, number 2 Spider-Man, number 3 is the X-Men, just because of my dad had all these Hulk, X-Men, and Spider-Man old comics, as well as I watched the cartoon series in the 90s when I was a kid growing up. I mean,
They're all classics.
were classics because
course.
they referenced the comic book so well. And the fact that when I first saw the first X-Men, I was so ecstatic. I can't remember when it came out, like 99 or something like that, 98 or maybe it was 2000. I think it's 2000.
I think it was 2000. 2001, one of those two.
Watching that and like, oh my gosh, and then watching the second one, then Spider-Man, watching all those things. But and then when I watched the third X-Men, I was a little taken back. I was like, really? That's how they're doing this? Like, why are you doing this? And then Wolverine.
Why is this happening?
Wolverine,
Who approved this
X-Men
movie?
Origins Wolverine just slapped me in the face. Like, oh, thank you, 20th Century Fox, for ruining like one of my favorite comic book franchises. So like after that, really that movie, and even First Class, I didn't really care for. Like, just left a bad taste in my mouth. Like, ugh. And like, I didn't go see the Wolverine because I was thinking like it was probably gonna be the same thing where somehow Sabretooth is somebody's brother that's not supposed to be somebody's brother, and then Deadpool never talks, and then Wolverine loses his memory from an adamantium bullet, which is the dumbest thing ever. But anyway, and it was something to where when I watched this, I was blown away because I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is actually a good X-Men movie, and I was ecstatic. Like I left the theater like. I went to with a buddy of mine. We double featured that, and yes, I'm sorry to say, I went and saw Godzilla for the 4th time. But I watched
What was
that.
it that drew you in? What did you like about it?
It was just, I don't know. It's hard. The character development, number 1, and the fact that the gang is back together. I think, well, majority of the gang, and then how it ended was just a perfect like just cherry on the top of the sundae for me. When I watched it, I was like, you know what, this is fantastic, and it set it up for a sequel, which I was pretty ecstatic for. And like I said, coming in from a fanboy aspect and then getting really let down to like they really can't fix this again. I would say Bryan Singer fixed the movie, the
Yes.
movies and really the timeline
He
for
had
me.
a nice little Band-Aid that he put over all our
Our broken hearts.
He did. I think he did a
John's
good job. Of the film did one of the best things I think it did was it did kind of band-aid a lot of the problems with the series so far. Like you said, the other movies that weren't quite so good. I think that was the good part, the best side of it. But I think it's also a film with a lot of problems to it.
Yeah.
To me, we had
get
talked
into
about
this.
the story, bringing the gang back together was great, and I do like that. But I also think the other side of that was the script wasn't very good. I mean, I thought there was some atrocious dialogue in here, especially attempts to fill in a lot of exposition, specifically in the beginning where they're trying to explain the dynamics of this time travel device or
It
plot
wasn't a device. It was
Well,
a
plot device is what I
Okay,
meant.
thank you. Okay.
Plot device.
They're
not
trying to
literal.
explain this whole thing, and like the whole film just screeches after this huge action opening to a halt, so that Kitty Pryde and Professor Xavier can chew through this really bad exposition dialogue that was basically like the whole movie stops and just says, "Sorry guys, right now we're going to explain to you this totally ridiculous time travel."
Okay, I'll give you Nick. That was
Yeah.
I'm a little sketchy on exactly what was going on as I'm sitting there. I'm like, so she
I'm
phases
sure
through
everybody was.
walls and then she's gonna phase your mind back in time to the 70s. I was like, okay, whatever. I did like.
Kitty doesn't do this.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
was
think they
like-
should have spent like, don't even explain
Well,
it. You know,
in
if
the
it's not going to make
comics,
sense, don't
yeah.
explain it. Move on. I'm already sold on the movie. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, in the comics, what they go with is Rachel Summers, who is actually the daughter of Cyclops, and Jean Grey is the one who sends Kitty Pryde's
Well,
mind.
that went out the
back
door in the third
into-
one.
What's
That's
Kitty
true.
Pryde's power?
She can phase. She can phase through
yeah.
things, and
She's
she
like-
can fly as well a little bit.
So she
little
has
bit.
absolutely zero time traveling.
She has
abilities.
absolutely.
I was about to say,
she
no,
has
she has
time
none
traveled, sent
whatsoever.
people through time
Okay.
0 times. So
Okay, well, I mean, and I'm fine with that because I don't read the comic books, and to me, if you need to sum up a couple characters into one, because this is a movie. What I see the joke the other day that what does X-Men: Days of Future Past and and Twitter have in common? They both have 140 characters. So I'm fine with them folding a couple characters together to make the movie work.
Yeah.
I just thought that there was some bad dialogue. There was some good stuff too. I thought there was a lot of good laughs. I was trying to think of one in particular,
Oh
but
my
mainly like Wolverine. I
Quicksilver.
thought Quicksilver was great. I thought
joke,
Wolverine
though.
was written pretty well. When he shows up, he had a lot of humorous scenes and a lot of interesting scenes, like his interactions with Beast. I really liked how he brought up the fact that they already knew each other in the past or in the future and were really good friends. And watching him try to explain that to everybody, I thought was interesting and fun. But I don't know, Jordan, what did you think about that from a comic book perspective?
Okay, from the comic book perspective, I've read Days of Future Past comics. I got the trade paperback at home, obviously, and so I'm pretty familiar with the storyline. And for me, this was I just loved it because for me this was the first really strong adaptation of X-Men comics in the movies. Like we've had, and even getting the bad guys, the strong X-Men bad guys. Because we've had, Magneto, of course, is the staple. But outside of Magneto, you've had William Stryker, who I guess is a good bad guy too. But they've never really gotten into a bunch of the X-Men bad guys. They've got like Mr. Sinister, the Sentinels, all those kind of guys that are kind of staple X-Men guys. So I was pretty excited for this one that they were actually working in, real bad guys like the Sentinels, working in the comic storylines and kind of sticking close to the storylines from the comics is something that I was super excited about.
I agree. I think they really embraced like kind of the nerdiness of comics and the the continuity of comics.
Even you can see, they were getting that direction by kind of shying away from. Everyone was upset with Bryan Singer's choice to make all the X-Men wear tight leather suits, so no one was huge fans of that. Even myself as a comic fan. So even in this one, I think he was moving away from making all the X-Men wear leather and run around.
Would you rather be in charge of the costume making, Jordan?
I would. You
look fantastic right now.
He would have Wolverine in his yellow spandex.
He
Okay,
would
They'd be going to a
spandex.
Goodwill across the countries.
There would be a Wolverine Goodwill suit-up scene in that film, which I would have loved.
Jake, to switch gears real quickly here a little bit, we had talked earlier in the week about one of the lead performances in the movie. Not really about it, but about the actress herself. Can you talk maybe a little bit about what you thought of Mystique and J-Law, as I call her, Jennifer Lawrence's performance?
The love of my life.
I just, I have kind of a beef with Jennifer Lawrence ever since the Hunger Games. Yeah, we don't like each other. No, I'm just kidding.
What did you think of her in the film?
Her in the film, she was better because it was pretty sweet seeing her do the Mystique fighting style where she's just kicking butt and taking names and stuff like that. So from that perspective it was okay, but like her acting, I wasn't really buying it. I didn't really get why she was so stubborn at the end of the movie. Like they're trying to explain this to her.
That's a little
the whole
more
time,
script, I guess,
like,
than.
But still,
performance.
You could portray like this inner struggle that I just feel like it wasn't there. She wasn't really.
That makes sense.
Like listening to what Charles had to say, Professor X, I should say, and it's like,
John, what did you think about her?
I guess I was such a sucker for the movie. Like seriously, like. Yes, I kind of got annoyed a little bit with when she was like, "No, I'm not gonna listen to you." But at the same time, I was like getting heartbroken because I'm just like, "Oh, like, is Xavier being put in the friend zone?" / like the love of his like really. I was thinking like now that I watch this, I'm thinking like Mystique is like really the love of his life. It's not. Come on, like it's not like you're my sister. Like don't friend yourself, okay? Don't put yourself in the friend zone, prof. Okay, just go for it. And like anytime he's like, please stop, and she's like, no, I have to keep doing this. And I was like, my heart broke. I was like, come on, Mystique, Raven, please, come back to me.
I didn't get that at all,
common sense.
I thought, your performance right there was actually better than hers. So this is one where I actually like Jennifer Lawrence in The Hunger Games. I think she's really good, and I can't think right off a hand what movie it was that got her that role. I'll find it later, but it was she did a very good performance in that, and then she's also done Silver Lining Playbook, where I believe she won an Oscar for, and she was very, very good in that too. So when I saw this, I can only imagine she just showed up for a paycheck or because she's in a contract, because I thought she's
in First Class, which
so wooden.
I totally forgot about.
Movie. Well, yeah, they lucked out that half of their cast became superstars in the meantime, and she was one of them. But specifically, there's a scene where she gets pulled into, or she may pull Eric Magneto into a phone booth. And I thought that scene, Magneto was fantastic in it. I thought he was really, not through dialogue, but through the emotion on his face and the way that he was acting, brought up this whole subtext that they had some kind of romantic relationship going on, and she did not reciprocate any of that acting back at him.
Yeah, see, that's what I got to say.
Okay, I'll admit that I did catch that.
In the dialogue, but you know that that's how she's supposed to be feeling, and how she's supposed to feel and how she looks like she's feeling are completely different things. You know what I mean? Like, she looks genuinely mad at him, and it's like, you guys are ex-lovers. You need to have some type of
ex-lovers.
No pun intended. But
do I sense a
none of that
spinoff here.
None of that's really been brought up because that wasn't brought up in First Class.
Oh, it was kind of. I mean,
it was hinted at, but
they had a kiss, Nick, in First Class.
Did
Come
they?
on.
Maybe I just didn't remember. Okay.
No,
but there wasn't a main love story between the two of them in that movie, right?
No.
So there's kind of this underlying, maybe attraction between the two of them, and I just thought that Fassbender, who plays Magneto,
was fantastic.
Really was able to just emote that without having to say it, without the script having to do anything about it, and I just did not feel like she reciprocated any of it.
Right.
And overall, the Mystique character, I just think they're forcing it. I don't think she's that interesting. She was basically a henchwoman in the first two films with maybe one or two lines, played by a supermodel, not an actress. So I feel like they've kind of taken this character and shoved it in there, and it's almost... Did anybody else feel like it was almost kind of a sexist character in the fact that, they've got her running around half naked basically the entire movie.
Well,
she's wearing little to nothing.
Look at the other X-Men movies. She's practically doing the same thing.
She is, but they got a supermodel to play that. They get one of our top actresses, young actresses right now. This actress has an Academy Award. She doesn't need to be running around, half naked to make her career anymore. So all I can assume is that she's doing this out of contract because she's contracted for 3 movies. But
maybe that probably explains why she didn't care for acting in the entire movie. Actually, by
well,
running
around
halfway
thinking,
naked, you're asking.
Hold on a second.
So maybe I'm off base here. Does anybody?
Maybe you could tell us the differences between movie Mystique and comic Mystique, because I feel like there's definitely something there.
Yes, comic Mystique usually wears clothing.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. She was.
Oh yes, she does.
Usually has some clothes on.
Oh really?
So, she has some spandex weird thing.
Yeah. Well, and as a youngster, I was kind of like, whoa, what is going on here? This woman is nude, but. So yeah, that is that. In the comics, there's really no relation between Mystique and Professor X like there is in the movies, which they really didn't establish in the originals. But you could even see in this one they were kind of trying to reestablish that because they set that up in First Class. So that's kind of fabricated in the comics. Though she is, she's Magneto's kind of in the Brotherhood, that kind of thing. So in that respect, that is a bit different, kind of her relationship to Professor X and I guess the X-Men in general. But for the most part, though, she is. I don't know if anyone would know. Obviously, she is the mother of Nightcrawler, who was in the X2, which never really got addressed, and
she was actually had some sort of a decent role in that movie as well.
In X-Men 2,
X2.
Yeah,
she was useful.
And they even she was even talking to Nightcrawler in a specific scene.
Yeah,
where she's like, he's asked her do you like something about changing and hiding who you are, and she's like yes or something, and then he said I like the way that I am and stuff. And I'm watching that, I'm like, this is your son. Do you know this?
Well, yeah,
you have to know this right now.
That kind of bummed me out. And then even in the first Class, they had the character Azazel, which basically is just a red Nightcrawler.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody got lazy, but they kind of created him in the comics. He is Nightcrawler's dad. So, unless between First Class and Days of Future Past there was a little baby Nightcrawler, poofing out, but that was not really addressed to my knowledge. So that's kind of disappointing that they kind of focus on certain relationships with other characters and kind of get rid of other ones.
Jordan, I'm glad you mentioned Azazel, because that kind of segues into my next good thing about the movie is I like the choice of mutants that they've had in this one. There's some obscure mutants in the future scene and the Quicksilver in the 70s, which is kind of a newer thing. And that's one of the things I really liked about the future scene is there's just some New Mutants that people who haven't read the comics or watched the TV show, they can see and
Well, yeah, I definitely agree. There are definitely tons of cool New Mutants. I don't know how familiar everybody here is with the comic stuff, but they had guys like Bishop in there, who's a sweet character from the comics, time traveler, awesome guy.
Yeah, I didn't really get his power.
Yeah, he like absorbs.
Somebody would shoot him and he would just all of a sudden become powerful.
Yeah,
that's all I caught from it. I'm like, is that gun attached to him?
Well, no. I don't know why they felt the need to make him use a gun all the time. I feel like that made him less. Should we? I don't want to get into spoiler territory, getting into characters.
Let's just go ahead and roll into
the spoiler zone.
Spoiler zone.
turn it off now if
That's
you don't
our
want to
cheesy
hear.
sound effects. So.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Guitar
So yes,
sound.
we're going to talk about some spoilers for the movie and things that happen plot-wise. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, you might want to either
Change
tune
the
out for a
station.
little bit, or you can tune out altogether. But come
Tune
back
out.
and check us out on YouTube under the YouTube search Nick Guy Harris, all one word, or
check out our KIGC SoundCloud on SoundCloud.com. And this podcast, as well as last week's podcast, will be up for you and your listening pleasure.
Great. So let's roll into the spoiler zone.
Okay, spoiler zone. So
So go ahead, Jake. Go ahead. We
Jacob.
haven't completely erased that point from
Oh,
your
I think
mind
you were
with
talking
our
about Bishop,
awesome
though,
music.
Jordan.
Yes.
So
I
just
was going
kinda
into Bishop
divulge
a
on-
little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, yeah, like I said, in the comics, he really, you could see him, he'd absorb the energy and kind of redirect it as a kind of thing. So he's a really interesting character. Actually, not really in the original Days of Future Past comics. He's from a series, The Age of Apocalypse, which is a similar...
Which is like, really, if you think about it, is kind of foreshadowing for what's coming up
There
next.
we go. Yeah, with Apocalypse stuff that announced, we can get into that. But yeah, it was kind of weird the way they went with Bishop's powers a little bit. But again, I think they kind of had so many mutants on their plate there. They were kind of having to balance them out and decide which ones to focus on.
See, this for me was one of the downfalls of the movie. There's so much time has passed between X2, which I thought was one of the best, probably top 3 superhero movies in my opinion.
I agree with that.
So I thought it was great, but in the intervening time, we've had about every comic book character that can be made into a movie.
Pretty much.
So in the wake of seeing the Avengers, where you have all these A-list talent, comic book heroes that can support films by themselves, team up and be on a team, and then you go back and watch the X-Men with characters like Toad, the guy with a long tongue, or the spiky guy that shoots spikes out of his skin, or even a lot of these future guys.
Or a loud
really,
yelling woman.
yeah,
Loud yelling woman.
I mean, they really there was the fire guy that turns into fire. There's the ice guy.
Sunspot, Nick.
Come on,
he has a
There's
name.
the metal guy
Hold on.
that turns into metal, and then he's super
Colossus.
strong.
Colossus, come on.
And it's
Nick.
like they all had none of those guys could support their own film, let
Okay,
alone
I
support
don't think
more
that's
than
what
a
it's
total
about,
of
though.
5 minutes of screen time because they're just so one-dimensional. I mean, all they do is just they have one power,
Well,
and if you get around that one power, they're easily defeated.
Well, I don't think the point of it was to make a character you can make a whole movie around. I think the problem was just that you don't really have time to get into those because, like Colossus is a super interesting character in the comics. He's a Russian in the comics, and like his family, he was actually a part of kind of the Russian mafia for a while.
Sure. Yeah. No. I'm
like
not.
it's just like they don't really have time or get into a lot of these characters, which
And
I think is
Perhaps maybe they're trying to make the situation seem more desperate, like
I
they
understand
wanted
all that.
the
I just thought their
Sentinels
powers
to...
were kind of silly.
Well, I mean-
in the wake of seeing Iron Man, Hulk, Captain America, and all these guys on the same team that are all like multifaceted, faceted superheroes that have multiple powers and can do different things.
Yeah,
and then
like-
you got these guys that have like one power.
well, that's
like
the point
Iron
of the
Man
X-Men,
and
though,
Captain
is-
America, who
is-
literally
Who
can
fly,
build a
can
suit.
shoot lasers out of their hands, can
And
do
throw
stuff in
a
the suit, or
shield.
like great scientists,
I would
or
much
like
rather see
$1 million
somebody-
Playboy philanthropists, to quote the movie. Boom! What just
Boom.
happened there?
The Hulk is practically Colossus but bigger, Nick. Come on, they have the same exact power. They're both super strong.
Not really, because the Hulk wouldn't have gotten beat down by those robots. The Hulk does have one power, but at the same time,
He's invincible.
Like I said,
he
Nick, I think
is
invincible.
he is a force of himself. They
That's
use
true.
him as that's their secret weapon. When they asked, how are you going to beat us? They say we have a Hulk. Nobody says we have a Colossus. The guy got
Well,
Again,
Pwned by
I
some
think
robots.
that just has to do with the writing and why they use those characters because they needed to make the situation look desperate. And in
it
any
looked
other
desperate.
situation,
agree.
the writers could have made it look like Colossus was just destroying Sentinels left and right. I think it all has to do with the writing and not with the powers themselves.
Oh yeah, I think they wanted to convey this idea that the reason why they're doing this last ditch going back in time is because it's such a desperate situation. Like you see, which I thought was just awesome to see, because in the comics that's a big thing. Is in the future all the X-Men are getting killed off. Wolverine. Like when I first read that as a kid, Wolverine gets completely evaporated, like all his skin, and I was like, oh my goodness, Wolverine just got like smoked.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I understand all that, and that's part of the story, but I felt a little underwhelmed by some of the powers that were being presented, other than, and this kind of goes across the board all around anymore. In the wake of other Marvel films, I didn't think any of the X-Men really, I mean, I don't know, even Wolverine. I mean, all he's really got are
the
claws.
bone claws.
And he can heal. Nick, and he can
Yeah, he
smell
does.
really good.
I just, you guys didn't feel a little underwhelmed by some of the powers of these mutants in the wake of.
No, I thought it was great.
I think that's the point of the X-Men, though, is they each have a power that when they work together, it's like they're all tag teaming.
I will say this in agree with you, Nick. My favorite X-Men man is Iceman.
Man.
He's like
Yep.
my favorite by far, and I think they underused him. Like I think it would have been a nice way to tie it all full circle type thing. Come back together as if you
Right.
see these characters as younger students in Professor X's school, and then you see them in the future when they're all grown up and like kicking Sentinels' butts, but they
They've
just
got
didn't
beards.
have. They just didn't have that part, which was a little bit of a letdown. I mean,
I totally agree too, because I've been waiting for 10 years to see since they introduced Iceman in the original X-Men couple of movies, to see him at full power, and then here he is at full power, and it's like, I've seen better,
He
It's
gets his
like,
head.
where
He
is
gets his
this
head
at?
Fire
melted
Sentinel.
off and then destroyed. I'm just like, oh, really? Great. That's
But
fantastic.
maybe I can roll this into, like, segued into one character in the movie that I thought totally met my expectations and brought something to the film that I don't think we've seen before on screen, and that was Quicksilver. I mean,
Yes.
John, what do you think about
Oh
the
my gosh.
Quicksilver scene? Can you talk about that a little?
The fact that, number one, just going back in time. Okay, that's something that's kind of a far fetched, especially in unless it's Star Trek, But they go back in time, talk to Quicksilver, and the imagery as well as just the cinematography in the whole scene blew my mind. I'm just like, my thought is, I'm a very factual person, so I had to figure out how are they doing this. But all the slow-mo shots, I mean, it's like watching The Matrix times 10. And then the fact that he's hilarious just cracks me up. When they come in the room and he's like, I already know who you were, just da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I read your wallet, and then he takes his wallet out from him and all that stuff. And him being just this central part of taking Magneto out of the prison that's 10 floors under the Pentagon is just fantastic. Granted, what I also liked about it is they also kept his character really a hush-hush. It's kind of one of those things, like, they didn't, like, for Godzilla, for me, when it was the atomic breath, they really
Had to bring that up, didn't you?
I did, because that
I
just
had to bring up the atomic
because I still
breath,
watched
John.
it, and I loved it. And the fact that they didn't really mention Quicksilver in this movie, the only time you really could tell is if you looked it up and hardcore looked through it. And that he was in this movie, it was just a happy surprise, as well as a nice comic relief to this honestly dark comic book film. I hopefully I'm not wrong. Like, what do you guys think?
no, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Do you want to go ahead, Jordan?
You were the one in the Quicksilver suit, Jake. Sure, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I was a little worried when I'd seen some of the set pictures of Quicksilver. You got the guy in his kind of Saturday Night Fever.
Pink Floyd.
Yeah,
Looked like
his
total
his
emo
Pink
power.
Floyd is,
Oh,
yeah.
it was straight up.
And everyone, that was the comic book world's reaction. Everyone was in uproar, like, "What is Bryan Singer doing? First the leather suits, now he's putting Quicksilver in silver jackets."
I was included in
So,
that group when I saw that picture.
and I agree. I was a little worried, but I think once you saw him in action, it looked really good. I think it looked great on camera, and I really think that's a really cool power that I've really never seen done a whole lot in comic book movies. I don't think. I mean, the whole aspect of the super speed and all that stuff. So I just thought that was cool to finally work that in, and they got a really cool nod to his relationship to Magneto in there.
That was probably the funniest
Which I
joke
think
of that whole
Jacob
movie. I was
talking
doing
about.
one of those obnoxious laughs where everyone in the theater turns and looks at you. I was like,
I guess I never caught this. What was this?
he's like,
well,
he just
it-
says that his mom knew somebody who could
said his mom used to date a guy that had magnetic powers.
Yeah, well, because in the comics, it's
I never knew this.
And Scarlet Witch, who are Magneto's children, who are twins. Scarlet Witch wasn't in the movie, but obviously they had Quicksilver.
She was, actually.
Yeah, well, they'd said, because I looked this up, Nick, because there was a little girl, but they said that is not Scarlet Witch.
What?
Because there was supposed to be an older
sister,
right? that her scene got cut or something from the movie, which they also cut a really cool future action sequence, which I think would have satisfied Jacob's desires for more future action. But so I'm really excited to see everything that got cut out later.
Yeah, to kind of wrap up the Quicksilver thing.
Yeah, Quicksilver.
I mean, I think that was the best part of the movie by a long shot.
Absolutely.
And I think it kind of peaked in the center, and for me, it kind of went downhill a little bit from there.
Well, yeah, and I just one last complaint for me, just the fact that when the whole scene with Magneto taking all the freaking metal, the stadium, as well as controlling the Sentinels. To me, I was like, he's not that powerful, especially at this age in his life. Like, maybe when he's like the old man Magneto, yeah. But here, I was just like, I just didn't buy it. I was like, really?
I just want to know what his motives were. Like, what was he expecting to do with all their guns pointed at them?
Yeah, that really wasn't fully fleshed out.
Not really sure.
You're going to cause the future to happen even more. And for somebody as smart as Magneto's character, he knows that he's not going to change anything by shooting everyone in the president's bunker.
And what's the point of moving an entire baseball stadium to set it down around the...
Well, that's what I was...
Apparently there's no such thing as a helicopter.
I think the idea was
then.
just to, to kind of contain the... Whatever was going on.
I mean, helicopters, airplanes, whatever can just fly right in and out. Nobody had a problem getting in and out of there.
Nick, he can make magnetic fields in the comics. He probably made one over the dome. You just didn't see it.
Then what did he need the dome for? Anyway, we can get into that for hours, but I thought it was a little pointless.
Don't question it.
Didn't like the third reel of the film. And I thought it really peaked with Quicksilver. So right after that scene, which was so fantastically filmed, the music choice was fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, the whole scene, I was just on the edge of my seat laughing the whole time as he repositions people to punch themselves.
That was hilarious.
Moves the bullets. And I thought that entire scene was absolutely brilliant. But to me, that was the peak of the film. And then right after that, they put him on they get on a plane and leave him. And I was like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you cannot be getting rid of this kid.
It's like Bryan Cranston dying all over again.
Well, they were doing the Boba Fett approach, I think. They wanted to give you a little taste of Quicksilver, let you think he's awesome, and then they'll hopefully, I think they have plans to bring him back for Age
That's
of
fine,
Apocalypse.
but and Empire Strikes Back actually gets better after they leave Boba Fett, where this movie I thought got a little worse. But
No, I would disagree.
I enjoyed
entirely,
it overall,
Nick.
but
well, before we close, I just like to let's talk about the ending of the film.
Yes,
How do we
let's
all
get
feel
into
about
that.
the ending? About the nice bandage that Bryan Singer made after the atrocity of #1 Wolverine X-Men and then the so-so First Class.
Yeah. Okay. I think he did a wonderful job, definitely, of wrapping it up. Because I mean, I know as a fan of continuity of comics, and then especially continuity of comic movies, there's a lot of kind of discrepancies between a lot of the X-Men films. So I think he did a really good job of kind of wrapping that up and almost doing this kind of alternate timeline, alternate history ending, where we get the future look, which was different, which just blew me away watching that. I got my cameo by Beast is my favorite X-Men. So seeing that, getting to see everything kind of wrap up in the end and set them up for kind of future installments in either in the past or future is something that I enjoyed a lot.
Nick, what about you?
just about the end of the film, or
just
to wrap up the whole film in general?
Just the end of the film, wrap up the whole film. Yeah.
Well, the end of the film, like I just said, was my weakest part of the film. I thought it kind of peaked with Quicksilver and went downhill from there. It just didn't. A lot of the character motivation didn't make sense at the end of the movie, and really the action I thought was kind of generic. I've been waiting since 1992 when I saw the X-Men cartoon on Saturday morning, and the X-Men fighting Sentinels every week. I've been waiting for the X-Men to fight some Sentinels. All right, and they get to the end of the movie in the 70s. They're going to fight these Sentinels, and it's like a 2-minute segment, and it was not very good. I mean, it throws two guys to the side, and then all of a sudden it's done. And I'm like, so that was kind of a big tease for me that never really paid off. And something I've been waiting a long time for is X-Men versus Sentinels. And the future Sentinels I thought were just a huge ripoff of the robot from Thor, even to the point that their face opens up and they shoot lasers out of them. Just like
oh my
Thor.
gosh, yeah, you're right.
So to me, it just the ending didn't really tie up the movie for me, and that's where I was a little bit disappointed overall. I thought it was a little bit boring towards the end, too. They needed a little more action set pieces to it, but they got me back on board with the after-credit sequence.
Oh,
so,
yes.
I don't know, Jake, any last thoughts on your side?
No, I really liked Bryan Singer's explanations of time travel. You know, a lot of different directors take attempts at explaining time travel, which is just a very hard thing to do, you know. But I think he did a good job with the whole the river effect thing, and how, you know, you may
That's a very
change
good point.
different things, but ultimately some things are just meant to happen. Like, I think that explains how Wolverine got his adamantium claws,
Which I was happy
and
about.
how like just some of the things that happened in the old movies should happen in this
Will
new
happen
timeline.
again,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. It's
Okay.
like,
How
It's just a-
Cyclops isn't meant to be vaporized after 5 minutes in
or
the
how
third installment.
he's supposed to be with Jean Grey. You know, I just think that was just beautiful.
Yeah, when the original cast shows up at the end of the movie, I was like, okay, here's
Oh,
why
yes.
they made the movie right here. Bryan Singer just wanted to
Yeah.
erase X-Men 3,
Pretty much.
But he
and
didn't,
I
like-
thank him for it.
He didn't
Exactly.
completely
Thank you
he didn't
for it.
completely throw away everything everyone else did, like all the other directors. Like, I think
No, he cherry-picked the good stuff, which
he
was
picked
awesome.
the good stuff and got rid of the bad, and so that was just
When Kelsey
Kudos.
Grammer walked down the
Oh,
hallway
my
for like
goodness.
a
Oh,
4-second
yeah.
scene, I was like jumping out of my seat
Yeah, and
because he was the best part of X-Men 3. And
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think Kitty
Absolutely.
Pryde was a good keep too. So you know.
yeah. That's really all I had to say.
Yeah, well, as for me, you know, I enjoyed, like, whatever all you guys think. Cherry pick the good stuff and then put a nice little bandage over the atrocities that happened the past, like, 5 years in the X-Men franchise. And I won't say atrocities, but just some really bad movies. I mean, come on. But overall, I was impressed, and I think the general consensus here is that we're all pretty impressed with it. At least Nick, he says he never.
I
doesn't
wasn't
really like-
impressed. I enjoyed it though. Even
Well, he
all
doesn't
flaws
count. Who cares?
aside, I enjoyed it.
Come on, Nick. Straight out of the comics.
It wasn't
X-Men
X2,
movie. It's
so-
finally here.
Well, it's okay. Well, we're gonna go on to a break, and then we'll be right back with some movie news, and we're just gonna wrap it up with some of our top 3 time travel films. We'll be right back here on the Quantum Quadcast, right here on 8.7 KIGC, The Kitchen.